There are a lot of pretty silly sports out there, but today we are going to talk about a sport that really just takes the cake in being the most idiotic sport in existence. Today we are going to be looking at slap fighting, a sport where big burly men basically just slap the life out of each other. Literally. Slap fighting consists of two men standing across from each other where they take turns slapping each other in the face as hard as possible, while the person being slapped has their arms behind their back, unable to defend themselves. They decide on who slaps first by flipping a coin. Then, when they start, the winner of the coin flip has 60 seconds to deliver their first slap to their opponent. If their opponent is either knocked out or deemed medically unable to continue, then the slapper wins. If they're not knocked out and they can continue, they then have 60 seconds to pull themselves together and deliver their own slap in return. This goes back and forth for either 3 rounds or until someone is knocked out, whichever comes first. Now, in my opinion, this is not a sport. This is literally a competition to see who can give their opponent brain damage first. There is little to no skill involved in slapping someone. If anything, it is just brute strength being used. Which, sure, there are some sports like weightlifting which are dedicated to strength, but there is just something so savage about using your strength purely with the intention of trying to knock your opponent out, which is literally giving them brain damage. Because that is the literal goal of this. When someone is knocked unconscious from a blow to the head, that is because they are suffering from brain trauma. Now, I do feel like a lot of people don't fully take into account just how serious getting a concussion can be, but a concussion is a form of a traumatic brain injury that happens when the brain is shaken within the skull. While the majority of people recover within 1 month, in some cases, symptoms revolve more slowly and may persist longer than expected. Studies have even shown that people who had experienced 4 or more concussions showed poorer attention, processing speed, and working memory. And even on top of that, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, I don't think I pronounced that right, but I'm trying my best, okay? Also known as CTE, is a brain disorder that is likely caused by repeated head injuries. It causes the death of nerve cells in the brain, known as degeneration. CTE gets worse over time. The only way to definitively diagnose CTE is after death during an autopsy of the brain. And of course, in this slap fighting, competitors are oftentimes going to be hit in the head multiple times per fight, which means that if they had any form of a brain injury after that first hit, that is only going to be exaggerated with every hit after that. And then if a competitor returns to compete in more fights within the league down the road, that can result in even more consequences from repeated brain injuries. I think a lot of people are not looking at this and seeing it for just how absolutely brutal it is, because when someone gets a brain injury, when they get hit to the head, that's not an injury we can just see with our eyes, so we can't fully understand the damage that is happening within someone's head when they get hit. Because we can't see the damage that's being done, it's just kind of easy for viewers to ignore it. Also, I should go ahead and note that Power Slap, which is one of the biggest slap fighting leagues, which we're actually going to talk about in a minute, they have actually come forward and said that they only let healthy adults compete in slap fighting, and that they do all the proper medical checks, and that they do have doctors and medical professionals on standby at their events. But in my opinion, any doctor who is willingly taking part of this is selling out just to make some money. Because I think that any respectable doctor who truly cares about people's health would not condone and participate in something like this. Now, sure, there are other combat sports out there that can result in head trauma and brain injuries. We can look at mixed martial arts and boxing, for example. But at least in those sports, there are specific skills that one can train in, not only for offensive moves, but also in defensive moves to be able to protect themselves from the opponent. Meanwhile, in slap fighting, the whole point is to just let yourself be hit. There's absolutely nothing you can do to protect yourself. I genuinely think that slap fighting only exists so that they can make money on the spectacle of it without fully taking into account the harsh negative side effects that this is going to have on its competitors. Now, one of the biggest slap fighting leagues right now is called Power Slap, and it's founded and owned by Dana White, who is also the CEO and president of the UFC. Having such a big name in the world of combat sports like Dana White be attached to slap fighting is going to automatically give this sport much more credibility credibility than it would have ever had otherwise. And Dana himself has even said that he truly believes that slap fighting could become bigger than the UFC, which I really hope it does not become bigger than the UFC. And upon doing research for this video, I have to say it really seems like there are also not many other people out there who truly think that slap fighting has any kind of chance of becoming bigger than the UFC. While clips of people smacking the absolute crap out of each other do tend to go viral on social media, and Power Slap has seen some viral clips come about from their slapping matches, I don't think there is any longevity in the world of slap fighting just due to the repetitive nature of actual slap fights. Like, I watched a couple clips of highlights of Power Slap matches in the research for this video, and I have to say, after a couple slaps, it gets pretty boring. Like, watching grown men just slap each other back and forth a couple times really isn't that exciting or interesting. It's truly the same thing over and over again, with just the biggest variable being maybe one of the competitors will fall over. That's it. And honestly, it just gets really old really fast. And obviously, I might be a little bit biased because I am not someone who's really interested in combat sports in general. However, I am not the only one who thinks that it is repetitive and a little bit boring. I found a clip from a podcast where one of the hosts literally tells Dana White himself that Power Slap is boring and repetitive and does not have longevity to it. Now, Dana didn't like that, and it was very much in denial and even called the podcast host stupid, which we'll see who's stupid in the long run when Power Slap does or does not succeed. And I don't think it's going to be the podcast host that's stupid, but hey, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. That's an option, okay? Now, another thing about slap fighting, and in particular Power Slap, that is not too great, is that unfortunately a lot of the competitors that take part in these slap fights aren't even paid very well to compete. Former UFC middleweight Eric Spicely revealed he was offered $2,000 to show and a $2,000 victory bonus for his Power Slap debut. Now, some fighters can earn more than that in higher ranking fights, but only earning potentially $2,000 for not only risking brain damage, but also to be in an event that is so closely tied into the UFC is just wild to me. Especially because the UFC in 2023 made $1.3 billion in revenue. Now, obviously, Power Slap and the UFC are different entities, but they are both owned and operated by the same person, Dana White. So he should have the power and the money to pay competitors more than $2,000 per fight. Like, in a lot of cities around the United States, $2,000 is barely a rent payment. I truly just think that slap fighting is a very unethical sport, and I really hope that Dana White is wrong and that slap fighting does not become bigger than the UFC. I don't think a few viral clips here and there from grown men slapping each other can really get the longevity a whole new sport needs to thrive, but you know, I guess we'll have to wait and see. In the end, I'm sure there is so much more that I could say about slap fighting, but I really just think that it is too dangerous and too boring also to ever be worth the risk. Out of all the body parts to risk for sports, your brain, your head, it's not one you want to mess with. Oh, we gotta protect our noggins, okay? But after all that, what do you think about slap fighting? Do you think slap fighting could ever make it as a popular sport? Do you think it's even interesting or worth the risk for competitors? Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and I will see you in my next video. Also, if you haven't yet subscribed, I would really appreciate it if you did. I make commentary videos on social media, pop culture, and anything I find interesting, and today it was the wild world of slap fighting. It's a wild one, that's for sure. But yeah, thank you so much for watching my video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!